I'm not quite got the panel as long as I'd want it to do, but it's close enough what I'm trying to do here, which is mainly just practice. And of course I just learned, if you like, that I need to practice a bit more, but that's fine. Okay, what I'm going to do now is just change one of my tools to a writing tip. Now I want this fairly cool when I do this, because I know this tool easily will burn and char the wood if I'm not careful, and I don't want that. This is intended to be just effectively red paint on a yellow background. So I don't want it really dark. And I know the fonts aren't correct, but it's close enough. I'll just get these in, and then I'll go back over them again and just thicken them slightly. As light a line as I can get away with, because you don't get second chances. Well, that's not strictly true, you do, but the leeway to correct mistakes isn't a great deal, unless you're lucky. Okay, I've got that in. So what I'll just do now is just tidy up some of these numbers a little bit. Okay, I've got some more lettering to do, so let me just put that pen down there and turn the heat off for a moment. Since the pens heat up fairly quickly, there's no particular benefit for leaving them on for long periods of time. Now this is almost the same size, with just 3 letters. At this stage I can erase the pencil lines, but if I go over the pencil lines with, or even just catch them with the heat from one of the tools, then they become permanent. So I've got the length of this locomotive a little bit wrong, or the placing of certain things in here, but so I'm just going to do is adjust that lettering. Okay. Sorry if I'm not talking. Tend to go a little bit quiet when I'm just concentrating on something like this to get it. Correct, there we go. That's close. I should be able to correct that slide over size when I actually go in now with the heat tool. Okay, so I'm using what they call a writing tip here. It's a very fine loop of wire which I've got running fairly cool. You can also get what they call ball tips, which literally is a little ball on the end, which is heated up by the wire behind it rather than directly through a current, and they get used a lot for writing as well. Rather like a ballpoint pen in a way, in that they can actually move in all directions fairly easily without catching on the grain of the material, just like a ballpoint pen does. It's a little bit harder with this fine tip, because if I move it horizontally, then it's actually a wider tip than if I'm moving it vertically, which is what I'm doing here. So I actually have to keep spinning the tool around in order to get a fine line. What I'm going to do now is just thicken that line up by using the width of the tool. To thicken and to darken this. Now I'm using this quite a heck of a lot cooler than I was using the shader, but it's getting a lot darker a lot quicker, and that's because it's a smaller area to heat for a start. And that means that the machine is actually turned down. It's not supplying a great deal of current now to this tip compared with the shader, but also because it is actually physically smaller in contact with the wood, it doesn't lose the heat as quickly, and also there isn't as big an area to dissipate heat into the wood. If anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask them in chat. I will answer them if I can. Say hello as well if you wish. Okay, that's the writing, and that was the bit I was looking least forward to. So let me switch back now to using a shader tip, which is the main tool that I'm using tonight. my intention here is I'm practicing with this just to see what effects I can get using it and how I can actually use it. Now, one of the things I want to do here is this whole section is corrugated, and I now want to put corrugations in. Now, normally a shader you use flat this way. I'm actually using the tip, turning it over, because what I've discovered is I get a very fine line by doing that, which normally I would have to use what is effectively a knife blade to get. And the problem with a knife blade is it has a tendency to cut into the wood, and that's not something I actually want to do on this. This wood surface is very smooth, and I want to minimise cutting into it as much as possible. I don't want it to feel rough afterwards. Now, because of dirt and other things, these lines don't need to be rock or dead straight. What I'm actually representing here is sort of the dark shadows of the corrugations, and therefore dirt or just general reflections in the area mean that in real life you actually wouldn't particularly see them as being dead straight either. But for some reason they often look better drawn by hand like this rather than as dead straight lines. We seem to accept them more as representations that way of real things rather than expecting them to look accurate. But in any case, this isn't a perfect representation. First time I've tried this, so I'm learning it as I go along. Okay, now I need to carry on and do that same thing across this top panel here. Anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free to do so. I will answer them if I can. Maybe do that a bit darker. Turn the heat up a little bit here. This is one situation where I turn the heat up rather than working more slowly, because I go too slowly and it's quite hard to actually keep straight lines. So if I turn the heat up, I can continue to move reasonably quickly with the tool, and I still get the dark line that I'm looking for. I might do after, at some point in the future of this, is go over this whole area again here and just darken it a little bit, but What you may notice is that these lines are acting a little bit like cross-hatching would be on drawing, and actually make the area look darker, which is fine by me in this particular case. That's an effect that's useful. One of those things that in hindsight I should have realised, but I didn't. But I can take advantage of it. It's been a little while since I've done any pyrography, so one reason for doing this particular practice piece is just to get back into using the tool and remembering other tools and remembering what sort of temperatures I need for things, how the tools react. So I'm using hardboard here, which is compressed sawdust basically. It's not a great board for doing this sort of work on, because it doesn't have a lot of sap, and it's the sap which is what you see turning brown here, not actually burning the wood. But one of the interesting properties of hardboard here is it's half brown. It's a bit like working on grey paper. One of the things that one of the useful things about working on a coloured object like this then is it can be a useful technique for certain images. For example, moonlight. You can represent moonlight quite well on wood this sort of colour, because it kind of gives the impression with the rest of the picture that it's dark. Stage images as well of people on stages are also a good thing to use this sort of colour of wood for, rather than the whiter things where you would then be forced to actually blacken the background. So this kind of provides a dark background, but allows the whole image to be somewhat lighter than they would otherwise be. Okay, just excuse me for a moment. I'm going to take a drink. It's quite warm work, is this? Okay, let's add a few more details in here. I'm kind of avoiding a couple of areas at the moment, one of which is the hull of this underneath, which is an extremely complex area, and I'm kind of not looking forward to it, but we shall see how that goes. So what I'm going to do here is I would like this area just on the head to be a lot darker, but what it is in practice is a grill behind which the locomotive's air horns are located. So I was thinking I might just try seeing the effect of using the lines further down the locomotive there, is to just try putting some fine lines into this and see how that darkens it down. It would be nice if it gave it the effect of a grill, which I can see in the reference image, or a mesh. It might not show up on camera, but I am getting texture in this, which may actually produce the effect that I was looking for. Maybe. Make it a little bit darker as well on top of that, using the normal shader. Go. I'd like to get it almost black, but what I don't want to do is carbonise the wood. That makes it really, really rough most of the time. In actual fact, you can almost see behind this in the reference images. Two dark round circles which will cause the air horns in real life, and I'm wondering if I can just hint at that in a way. No, it's not showing up. Never mind. Okay, let's do some of this head area here. This is a dark red because of the angle of lighting. It's darker than sort of this area here, but it is the same red. So I kind of want to get in this sort of shade here. I want it to be as smooth as I can here, because whilst the side of the locomotive has a lot of reflections from the environment, this head area here doesn't. So it's a very uniform colour. So I don't want any dark spots at all. And I've just realised I can see some of the drawing, and I'm not sure now I'll be able to take it out. No, it's cooked in. Just try a little bit harder. What happens is the graphite is absorbed into the liquid sap as it's cooking, and it kind of well, it's like a varnish basically. It varnishes it into place and you can't get it out. So I forgot and just saw it now, so it's too late to do much about it without some more severe erasing, which I don't want to do on hardboard because it will show up as a very rough surface and I don't want that, even if it is a practice piece. That's why we practice, to remember to do things like erase lines like that before they get embedded. Now I do have a line down this side here and here, but that's okay in this particular case. I don't need to erase those because that actually is a dark edge, and therefore if I do cook those in, that's not going to be particularly a problem because I will be going over them and darkening that edge anyway. I want this relatively dark, so I'd like to get it somewhat similar to that sort of colour there, but I want to do it slowly because I don't want blobs to form. Let's see if I can avoid it. That can be quite difficult as well because this being a hardboard, which is various sawdust small mixed together, you do sometimes get some particles of wood which heat quicker and therefore produce a darker colour than others, but generally it's not too bad. Wood like pine, for example, can be quite difficult to do because it's the grain of pine is almost two different, I won't say types of wood because they're all pine, but you get a very soft area between quite hard areas. It makes it difficult to carve as well. But when you're doing pyrography on it, the soft areas heat up very quickly and shrink away from the tool and go quite dark, and the hard areas don't, and therefore you get a varying, almost like a zebra effect if you go across the grain, which is something that you don't often want even if you are drawing zebras. This is darkening down quite nicely. Still want it to be a bit darker still. Although everything, or the majority of this locomotive is red, the different lighting